Welcome to Austin Eras, the podcast that unravels Austin's transformation into a 21st century boomtown and explores its potential future. Brought to you by Collective Advisors, Austin Eras takes you on a journey through the city's evolving landscape and rich history, offering insights into its dynamic past, present, and future.
Welcome to the Austin Eras podcast. I'm your host, Adam Flagg, and I'm excited today to bring a guest to you that you may not know, but he's been very involved in Austin in a lot of different ways. Eddy Patterson. He's a barbecue trailblazer, a venue visionary, a restaurateur, and a true Austin original. Let me tell you a little bit about Eddy before he gets on here. He co-founded Stubb's legendary barbecue, both the sauce brand and the iconic downtown music venue, as well as the restaurant. He's originally from Lubbock, Texas. Eddy studied entrepreneurship at Baylor University, lived in New York City, and returned to Austin to chase a dream rooted in community, music, and flavor. He helped take Stubbs BBQ Sauce from a small side hustle to one of the most beloved brands in the country. He eventually acquired by McCormick. He also co-founded the Stubbs venue, which launched during South by Southwest 1996, and has since hosted legends like the Fugees, Willie Nelson, Metallica, and Lady Gaga. Eddy's now the owner of Eberly, a fine dining space featuring the historic Cedar Tavern bar, salvaged from New York City. More on that later. And also runs Austin's Pizza here in town. He's known for his entrepreneurial grit, his hands-on leadership, and deep community roots. Eddy lives by the belief success is a journey, not an event. It takes constant discipline. Welcome to the show, Eddy.
Wow. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for the nice introduction, and glad to be here. It's fun to see you again. And listening to that was a lot of fun things have happened over the course of my career, and it's still going. So thank you for that. Thank you for being or letting me be here, of course, today, and excited to share with you where we are and what we're doing, and importantly, kind of where we're going to.
So today's a little different. We started to record the podcast and a fire alarm went off, so it's been a weird day so far. But Eddy, you and I go back maybe 5-6 years. We're in a business together and have been for a while. So it's been nice getting to know you and working with you over the years here. You've done so many different entrepreneurial things, but I want to take you back actually to the early days. So you're a West Texas guy. You're from Lubbock. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about what that was like growing up. You told me that you grew up selling vegetables door to door. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, I grew up in Lubbock, Texas many moons ago. And, I guess the entrepreneurial bug caught me early, right? Mm-hmm. It was just something that kind of was born within, I guess, right? So I would go to my mom's garden and take rotten tomatoes and take them off the vine and go knock on door to door selling these rotten tomatoes. And my neighbors got a big kick out of it. I don't even remember that, but that was what my parents, remind me that was what I was doing early on. But and then over the years, growing up in Lubbock, it was mowing lawns. One of my first jobs was scooping ice cream at Baskin Robbins. Uh-huh. Things like that. One of my friends' dad had a Baskin Robbins franchise. And so I had many jobs, always enjoyed working, wanted to work. And, I think that's something that, I still have today, continuing the journey, keep working, never give up. So, it started at an early age.
So you start out in West Texas, you're doing this. I can relate, by the way. I went door to door selling golf balls. I clean them up from an old golf course, wash them up. I had a lot of clients. People want to support. So I get, it plants that seed when you're, 6, 8, 10, 12 years old. So you get out of there, though. You get out of West Texas. You come to Baylor University to study entrepreneurship. Was that something you immediately came into school and said, this is what I'm studying? Did it take a few years to get there? Or how did that all happen?
Sure, yeah. So Baylor is an interesting part of my family history. We have 72 members of our extended family that have graduated from Baylor.
Really?
So, yes, we have... and this goes back to, uncles and cousins and grandparents. And my mother went there, and my dad's from Waco. So, Baylor, I remember my parents saying, you can go anywhere you want to in college, but we'll help you pay for Baylor. So I was like, I'm going to Baylor. But it was, a great school. And yes, Baylor at that time, I guess in 1985, they had started a entrepreneurship program, degree. And it's still going very strong today. It's recognized as one of the top entrepreneur schools in the country. But no, I immediately was attracted to that back then, no one even knew what the word entrepreneurship was. It was kind of a hard word to say. No one could really understand that. But what I learned at Baylor really taught me well. I mean, it was marketing, accounting, business, ethics. And one of my classes was the professor said, you have to start a business. This semester, it was a 2-semester deal. And they said, we will evaluate you and give you a grade on how well your business does. So it kind of gave you real world applications. And I remember we started a company going to local vendors, and that's when people used to write checks. Now, I know we don't do that as much, but it was, we would take the checks that were bad checks, if you will, and kind of factor those and buy these bad checks and then go out and try to collect on those. So it actually did pretty well, the company, and we got a good grade. It's not a business I would want to do today, but at the time it was something we did, and I learned a lot from it, right? So I think real world application in my filter is really applicable even today. I mean, we always get inundated with information and learning, and you always want to be curious and keep learning. But to be able to execute and apply that, I think that's really what separates people. And so I think that was one of the things that the teacher, you look back, was trying to say, everybody wants to start a business, say they can, but to go do it, learn from it, and I think that's really the lesson to be learned.
So you were learning lessons from childhood with the Rotten Tomatoes to college with the bad checks, and you graduate from Baylor, and probably not what I would have expected in your story. You moved to New York City.
Yes.
What are you doing in New York City, and what draws you there?
Yeah, so at the time, my brother, who's younger than me, was in New York. He was following an acting passion that he had, so he was up there acting. He went to acting school, and I visited. And you can imagine being from Lubbock and being from Waco. You go to New York, you're like, whoa, this is exciting, And I always tell people, I got my degree at Baylor, but my PhD, I got it from New York City on the streets, And I just loved it, the energy, I was telling someone recently, I didn't even know what sushi was. I didn't know what a bagel was. These are things that you couldn't get in Lubbock, back in the mid 80s, right? So New York just opened my eyes to everything, just from the environment, different types of ethnicities and cultures, and it was just amazing, right? So that's what brought me to New York, was my brother. And then it was, looking at ads in the paper and trying to go get a job. And, the old saying, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, right? Frank Sinatra's song, I guess. And that was kind of really where I started my journey, just in terms of the working world. And I got my first interview, I got my first job at my first interview, and did really well at that company. It just taught me a lot. One of my early parts of that job was, they said, here's a zip code, and that was the only training I got. And so they said, go out and sell this computer service in this zip code. Now, granted, in Manhattan, the zip code is, it's not about the area, the size, it's, how tall things are. So anyway, went and was pretty successful at this company. And then fast forward is where some of the other Texas buddies that I had were also up there kind of following their dreams.
Okay.
My partner at Stubbs was also from Lubbock, and we got together up in New York and we're kind of homesick for barbecue, and it's all things kind of Texas related, if you will. And that's kind of where our Stubb journey started up in New York.
So there's this guy, Colonel Stubblefield.
Well, CB Stubblefield, yes.
CB Stubblefield.
CB Stubblefield, yes.
And so he starts out in Lubbock, but somewhere along the way he gets to Austin.
Right.
So Stubb, this is where Stubbs comes from. He ends up in Austin, and so you're migrating to Austin at some point to see him, or how does this all connect?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back even when we were younger. My parents used to go to his restaurant in Lubbock, in like 1968 in the 70s. Stubb had a very small but very famous little barbecue joint.
Good following,
right. Muddy Waters and B.B. King and all these famous Stevie Ray Vaughan, all these guys would play at this joint. I mean, really just probably 900,000 square feet, little place on the east side of Lubbock. So I was very familiar with Stubbs, and like I said, when I left Baylor and was up in New York, my partner was also up there, And he and Stubb had bonded and created a friendship, and helping him out, right, really was because he had already left Lubbock, and he moved to Austin to follow some of the musicians. Joe Ely and all these guys, and Jimmy Dale Gilmore, all those guys had moved to Austin to pursue kind of the music career. And so Stubb came down here, had a restaurant in Austin, and so that's kind of how all of it kind of got connected. And then, he reached out to us and, had the barbecue sauce, and we would fly that up to New York and share it with our friends. And we knew immediately there was something special there, right? That his sauce and the barbecue, and we would feed it to our friends. And I think that's when the entrepreneurship kind of, for me, kind of kicked in. I was like, wait a minute, there's something really magical about this. The story is authentic. Something I connected with, knowing the history and the friendships that we had. It just started working, right? And so we started helping Stubbs take his recipe, get it into a bottle, right? Okay. And then from there, the whole distribution unfolded, and all the hard work and all the, I always tell people it's the 25-year overnight success story began. So it's a little bit, kind of interesting how it, it starts in Lubbock, goes to New York, but then it, ultimately finds its way home in Austin, right? Where that just made sense, right? The restaurant's here, he was here, and it's just, everything kind of from there just kind of started to, unfold for us.
So you have one foot in New York City, you got that lifestyle, you got your friends up there, you have maybe your heart in Texas. What drives you from New York City to Texas? Where does that crossing over point happen?
Yeah, that's a great story. I'll again try to make it kind of quick, but so we all had different jobs, right? And I was working for another company at that time. But you're right, my passion, my heart was in Stubbs, and what my boss at the time said, he kind of knew that there was probably the side hustle, as you mentioned, and he said, Eddie, please don't let that be a distraction, right, to my employment, which was medical insurance and salary and 401k and all those things that you want in a job, right, or you think you do. But I knew that I had to follow my heart on Stubbs, and so that side hustle was just getting bigger. And so we had contacted HEB, right, here in Texas, and we had an opportunity to go see them, not the buyer, but to have a little barbecue party for HEB. And that really kind of set the tone, and we had traveled down to Texas. We met with HEB. The buyer was interested, and we got kind of the green light to start that, to start selling into HEB. But going back to how does that work with the New York job? It didn't. In fact, I got fired from my job in New York, and so that decision was made for me. And and it was. I look back on that, and it was like the best thing that ever happened to me, right? And it's funny when you look at real entrepreneurs, most of them have been fired from a job.
100%.
I mean, it's just that is the track record for most entrepreneurs. And I remember I got all my stuff from the office in New York, and I'm walking down the street, and I see my partner from at Stubbs, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm full time." And so, he was like, "What do you mean? We don't have a position. We're not hiring anybody. We can't afford anybody." And I look back and I go, that's just for me was the decision to say I'm committed to Stubbs. We're going to make this dream a reality. And I moved to Texas. I think a week later, kind of couch surfed a little bit, and everything just started falling together for us.
So CB Stubbs is in Austin. You've been helping him with his barbecue sauce. And the next logical thought is, hey, we're making this a full-time gig, so we're going to create a physical restaurant location.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a great story too. I mean, so the barbecue sauce, the marinades, we had that in HEB. We were knocking on doors at other retailers, outside of Texas, even Publix and Kroger.
So the sauce started way before the idea of the restaurant.
I would say a few years before, yes. And we had always wanted to have a restaurant, right, obviously. And Stubb did too, right? Yeah. And so we had looked around and knocked on lots of doors in Austin to find a restaurant. And Stubb had a restaurant in Austin before, but that didn't make it, right? There was, in my opinion, more of a commercial land play that kind of moving tenants around. So his restaurant was no longer, but he always wanted another one. So we we found this perfect spot in downtown, right? It was horrible. When I say horrible, I mean like homeless people were living there. It was just, I don't think they even had electricity barely. There was no running water. It was just but it was right in the middle of downtown. It was a big open yard. And we were very excited about, the possibility of this place working. And I'll never forget Stubb, so we drive over to Stubb's house, say, hey, I think we found this great spot. And Stubb had such a personality, right? He was, 6'6", cowboy hat made him almost like 6'9", and hands the size of a brisket, and just this. But he was I guess intimidating, but he was also very kind and generous, right? He was just people had to touch him to see if he was even real. He was an amazing guy, right? And so anyway, we said, hey, Stubb, I think we found the perfect spot for Stubb. And so we get in the car, we drive over to 8th and Red River here in Austin, downtown. And this place, as I mentioned, was just horrible. And he looked at it, and it got real quiet. And we were excited, but something was wrong. I mean, Stubb just kind of looked down, and we thought, oh no, this is terrible. We've done something wrong here. And he goes, this is hell's half acre.
That's a quote.
Yeah, but he goes, it's a perfect place for Stubbs. And so, we were ready to go. And so we got the property, put a lot of, blood, sweat, years and tears into the place. Here, 25, 30 years later, it's still going, and it's stronger than ever. It's the same spot. And it's very special, and I think it's really, in my opinion, been a fabric of our community and the musical legacy that continues on. And Stubb's history, if you look at it and look at it's authentic and it's real, and I think as consumers and people identify with that. And so I've been very privileged to be a part of that and helping the ways that I've had. And it's helped me too, right? So it's been a wonderful, story, and it's changed a little bit. When I say change, I mean just the ownership. Stubb, I will tell you that he passed away on the day we closed on the property, and so you can imagine, we're sitting there. Do we do this? Do we even open it? I mean, what's this going to be without Stubb?
Yeah,
and it was really soul searching, and his friends and his family and everyone said Stubb would want this to happen. You have to do this. So we did. And his grandsons are still part of the company, of course.
That's incredible.
So it's just a really feel-good, authentic story that I hope I'm proud of, and I think a lot of people are.
I think you should be. I remember I took last summer a tour of the Moody Center, and they take you all around, the backstage, everything, and you go through this artist hallway. And they've named each room after an iconic music venue. They've got Continental Club, Armadillo World Headquarters. There's Stubbs.
Right.
I mean, imagine you could have had no idea that this was going to happen when you started this place. So I guess the question that probably all our listeners are thinking, and what I'm thinking is, how on earth do you go from a barbecue sauce to a restaurant to a concert venue to an iconic concert venue to having the Fugees open up South by Southwest 1996 and then win a Grammy the same year? How does all that happen? I mean, that's just absolutely nuts.
That's a great question, and I reflect on that a lot too, right? And I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all answer. I think the dynamics of something like that are, I think first of all, it has to be authentic, it has to be real, and I think Stubbs is absolutely that. And I share that in the context of when we went through something recently with, I think it was, COVID, and there's Black Lives Matters, and, there's a lot of things that I look back and think about. For example, there's products called Uncle Ben's. Remember Uncle Ben's rice?
Yeah.
Well, there was no Uncle Ben, and they had to change the packaging because of that. The Aunt Jemima on the pancake syrups and all that, there is no Aunt Jemima. It was a marketing, scenario. The Land O'Lakes, the Indian on the Land O'Lakes. So there was no Land O'Lakes Indian lady. So these are iconic brands that are in our culture that were really scrutinized during these movements. And I think about Stubbs in the context of, he is authentic, it is real, it is his recipe, it is his image on the bottle. And I look back at his story, and he was, I think, 2 or 3 times decorated tours of duty in the military, and was one of his most proud accomplishments in life. And he had a Purple Heart recipient He was a gunner in Pork Chop Hill, one of the all-black infantries. I mean, so this man really saw, some terrible things in the world. He saw famine, he saw hunger, and he saw, the wars that we will never fight like that in the modern world, right? And I think it made a big impression on him. And he came back and he said, I want to feed the world. And that was a mission that he had. And I think, those ambitions, inspirations that he had just touched all of us, in many ways. And so, Stubb's success was really the good fortune of so many other folks that identified with that. And so there's so many people that helped make Stubbs what it is today and still do. So
I think one of the key themes you see in Austin is just the idea of authenticity and how something really has to be authentic to really be embraced by the city. Something like Stubbs is, and I think in turn it was embraced by the country. I mean, the barbecue sauce, I go to any grocery store across the country, I'm going to find it there. I'm going to see Stubbs' face on it. Yeah. So whether he chose to try to feed the world during his lifetime or feed the world after his lifetime, it's happening. Right. And now I'm going to pivot to the idea of being an entrepreneur a little bit here. So this barbecue sauce, this restaurant, this whole brand gets bigger and bigger. And McCormick is what, the biggest spice sauce distributor in the entire country? Is that right? Biggest company.
They're one of the biggest, and they're vertically. I mean, they make their own spices, they package it, they sell it. So they're absolutely a huge company, right? In fact, every day, every one of our listeners will have something from McCormick in their body before 12 o'clock.
Really?
One of their ingredients, yes.
That's great. Okay,
so I mean, that's scale for you.
That's amazing. So they come knocking on your door, and you guys have put all the time and effort. This is the dream that started it all, the barbecue sauce. Mm-hmm. And they come knocking on your door, what, 10 years ago, 11 years ago? How long ago was it?
2015.
2015.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they come to you in 2015 and say, hey, you guys are one of the most popular barbecue brands in the entire country. We want this. So is that your first business exit? We're selling to McCormick? For
me personally, yes. That was because we had been so committed to Stubbs and all the things that we did, all the retailers and manufacturing, all the things we did. But yes, McCormick was, I guess they were very interested in our product, saw the potential. And I think, honestly, when you look back, it was it was a great fit. It was a great fit for them. It was a great fit for us, because at some point in the cycle of your business, to have someone like a McCormick come in, they can scale things on a bigger, faster level, right? And so it was great for the brand, it was great for the individuals, and great for McCormick. So, and in fact, I think if I remember correctly, they're publicly traded, so their stock paid for our transaction in like 2 days because the stock went up. So, it was pretty remarkable how that works. So. But it's McCormick they're great people, and we still have relationships with them because of the restaurant, and they have to. They own the brand, obviously, so there's been a lot of partnerships there, and I think it's been a great fit for everyone. So, by the way, I want to go back to one thing about you said, and I was thinking about as we're talking, what makes the Stubb story successful, and authenticity is the biggest part of it, but the product has to be good.
Yeah, good point.
If you don't have a good product, if it doesn't deliver on the expectations, right, with the value or the brand promise, all those things you hear about, it won't be in business long. So Stubb's product is just phenomenal. And you can see that on the reviews and the testimonials. It's a wonderful product, and I think that is another huge part of the continued success.
Yeah, I think so too. We like it, our house, watching I think it's on Hulu, but maybe the History Channel, The Food That Built America. I can imagine an episode about barbecue sauce and Stubbs being part of that. Absolutely.
It's funny you say that, because there needs to be a movie about Stubb and his life, and the whole his background, and it's a remarkable story, and I think it'd be a great movie. And so yes, I think that would be fun to. And there's been some discussion and some early works on that, and so maybe that'll happen one day. But great story, and someone I think all of us can identify with. A very humble beginning and something that touches the world. It's you just don't see products like that every day. So again, it's just something I'm a badge honor that I carry today. And I will say that every time I'm in a grocery store, I'm always going over to the barbecue sauce aisle to see where Stubbs is, and it's been many years that I haven't seen Stubbs in a grocery store. So I think it's the story continues.
So I'm a music junkie. I grew up loving music and being involved in the music business. We've had an episode or two with some interesting musicians and such. I'm curious about you. So this starts with the barbecue sauce. It doesn't necessarily start with the music venue. So did you grow up someone that was really into music, or did live music just kind of become part of the brand?
Well, I love music, of course. I'm not a musician, so there's no musical talent. My brother, coincidentally, had the talent with music. He could play any instrument by ear, so he had that gift. I do not. But I'm a big fan of live music, of course, and it goes back to not many people you'll talk to has seen Elvis Presley live. So I saw him. That shows my age, of course. But my mom took my brother and I, when Elvis, one of his last shows, to Lubbock, and my mom took me and my brother. I think my brother fell asleep at the concert, but I've been like all of us. It's, when you see live music, it's something that I think it impacts us all, and I've just been really excited to be a part of kind of the whole musical venue. And I tell people, if I never see another live music show again in my life, I saw a lot of music. You can imagine.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
But and there's so much variety in music, and I really I don't have a preference. I really enjoy all of that. So it's been really fun to see that. And I think the Stubbs part of that story is, I think that the reason Stubbs is successful today, one of the reasons, is because we're providing an experience,
Mm-hmm.
And an experience is so important to brands today. And I think what makes Stubbs really unique and special is that in most venues today, you're assigned, here's your ticket, you're assigned a seat, go sit down, enjoy the show, that kind of format. Whereas Stubbs is, everything's general admission. There's some VIP spots, of course, but for the most part, it's just an open area where you can go, you can take your date, or you can go with a whole group of friends, and you're all connected and you're all together experiencing, a show in what we consider a smaller venue, right? It's not a 25,000 person venue with the big screens. It's a more intimate connection. And I think people really, really walk away with just, really excited about what they've experienced, right? And they're really connected with the show. And I think that's another big part of that. So I've got a front row seat to that all my life. And it's exciting to see, when the music comes on, the lights are going on. That's been incredible. And really, I just, giving credit to Charles, my partner, and he started ACL and the festival and all his success. And, I remember reaching out to him. We were buddies, and I said, hey, man, we're going to do this restaurant, Stubbs. Would you have any interest coming down and booking the venue? He was doing something different at the time. He said, yeah, that'd be great. And so, that just has, obviously turned into a tremendous success, and Live Nation and all that as well. So, the musical part is, yes, a big, big part of the Stubb story. And it goes back before our restaurant and venue. Stubb had, like I said, Muddy Waters and B.B. King and George Thorogood and, the Joe Elys of the world. And, he was very connected to the musical community. And, he goes back, he was selling barbecue at Antone's before there was a Stubb. So his musical heritage and story is very connected to the whole part of barbecue and the blues, if you will.
So one inside baseball question, I guess, is what's the reality beyond the enjoying the music at night, the reality of running a music venue and keeping the restaurant and keeping all the lights on? There has to be some challenges there too. Now, you left that business a few years ago, right? You now are gone from Stubbs. Right. Just like any good entrepreneur, you move on and try different things and do different things. But what was the underbelly of what that looked like? I'm going to give credit to another
gentleman. And part of this was Ryan Garrett. And Ryan Garrett is the general manager at Stubbs. He has been closely tied to Stubbs for, I guess it's maybe 25 years. And he'll get mad if I'm missing a couple years either way. That's what happens as you get older. You forget the years here. But Ryan came in and was a dishwasher and started there for a long time, and is now, the main guy who keeps the glue of all of that together. And what he's created is a culture, right? And a culture is really, don't ever overlook a culture of your business. Any business, you need a culture. And if you don't get that right, your business isn't right. And I say that because the culture at Stubbs is unlike anything I've ever seen. From the sauce company to the restaurant, these are hardworking people, and Ryan created a culture that people want to be there. And I think you met his wife there. I know he did. I don't know if that's just here. Thank you, Ryan, on the public knowledge here. But Kate and but I've seen the relationships that are formed in restaurants, and that's I think that's a great thing. I don't think that's in my opinion, something you should celebrate, because
absolutely
the relationships that the families that have been created at Stubbs are legacies. And we have Cornelio, who's a pitmaster at Stubbs, has been there equally as long, 25 years, and his family works at Stubbs, and I think probably his grandkids will probably work there one day. I mean, it's that kind of environment is really what I'm trying to suggest, that Stubbs has had a culture of family, a culture of that really promotes that, and I think that's been a big part of our success there.
Eddy Patterson, restaurateur, barbecue legend, a lot of different things we could call you. We're going to be right back. We're going to pause for a break with our sponsor, and we'll cover what you're doing today and where you think the future of Austin's going, along with our new segment called The Good Hang. We're going to ask you some great questions about Austin's culture.
In every episode of Austin Eras, we explore the layers of Austin's history, its vibrant present, and its exciting future. Just like our city, your financial journey is a rich tapestry, woven with moments that define you. At Collective Advisors, led by Adam Flagg, Managing Partner, Senior Wealth Advisor, and Certified Financial Planner Professional, your financial story is in skilled hands. We understand that your financial needs are as unique as Austin's skyline. And much like the city's history, innovation is at the heart of what we do. Whether it's investment management, retirement planning, or navigating life's transitions, Adam and his team leverage a collective of dependable professionals to support your financial journey. Their goal is to help you build, maintain, and enjoy financial security. To start crafting your financial legacy with a team that's as dynamic and innovative as Austin itself, visit collectiveadvisors.com or call 512-467-1923.
And we're back with Eddy Patterson, barbecue trailblazer, venue visionary, and community builder. Let's jump back in. I want to talk a little bit about getting out of the barbecue sauce business, getting out of the Stubbs business. You kind of had a Midas touch. You've done pretty well. One of my favorite restaurants in town is Eberly, and I feel like Eberly has more than just, hey, this is a cool restaurant story. There's a lot of real magic involved in that place. What was that like, going to do something totally different, fine dining, coming out of these other things? What made you want to pivot there?
Yeah, again, I think it's another great story that was very personal to me. The whole concept of Eberly had really originated from a bar called the Cedar Tavern. The Cedar Tavern was a place that my brother, going back to New York, he would take me to this bar. It was his favorite little hang there in New York City, 11th and West Broadway. And so it was right in the NYU area, and it had moved around. I mean, the bar itself was 150 years old and had moved to different locations throughout New York. But it's a beautiful bar. We would go there. And so it's just something that was very, when I look back on my life, that I enjoyed with my brother, right? And so fast forward, we started Stubbs. Really, that was kind of rearview mirror, right? My brother's no longer with us, so for sentimental reasons, that was something that I look back on fondly.
Of course.
So I get a call from one of his best friends, Tommy Maitland, and we're still lifelong friends, and he's with Eberly. And so he calls me one day and said, "Hey, you heard about the Cedar Tavern is going to close and it's for sale?" And I was like, "Oh, that's too bad." He goes, "Oh, you ought to email this guy." And this was way back in early days of email. I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll reach out to him. Didn't think much of it. And I just said, how much for the bar? I mean, that was it on that email.
Okay.
How much for the bar?
Cut to the chase.
Just throwing something out there.
All right.
This guy emails me back, and it just gave me chills because he goes, he saw my name, and he put it together, and he told me a little bit about the bar, and he goes, is your brother Bobby Patterson? And I was like, wow, this is something I need to follow up on and understand, because he knew my brother. And so I reached back out to him, and I told him my brother had passed, and he had the Cedar Tavern was something we enjoyed going to. And so he knew about Stubbs, and we kind of connected all that together. And so it wasn't about buying the bar in New York, because they were going to do a condo. They were trying to get rid of the bar, right?
Okay.
So my partner and I, we said, hey, let's take a run at this bar and see if we can do something with it. We thought we would bring it and put it in Stubbs, right?
Okay.
And some of the other parts of the property that we had, we thought it'd be a nice fit for that, because it is hand carved, 150-year-old mahogany, that's one of a kind. It's a beautiful bar, Tiffany glass, leaded glass that's inlays.
Amazing.
It's
you can't even describe it.
You really beautiful. And I would mess up if I tried to. But and it's a big bar. When I say that, I mean physically, it's 50 feet long, 15 feet high. So it takes a big space to hold this bar. It turns out that they were Donald Trump and Oprah Winfrey and some other celebrities were trying to get this bar. And the reason they decided that we could buy this bar was because one of the things the owners wanted was to not privatize it. They wanted it to be in a public format, right? In a public venue where people could enjoy it. And we wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we ended up getting the bar. Another crazy story. We walk into the bar to get it and put it on a trailer, or a truck rather.
Uh-huh.
And that night, the guy we bought the bar from passed away. But we already had our bill of sale and already had the legal documents. It was our bar, but the family wasn't notified. And they walked into the bar and they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're taking our bar. We bought it from the family member." And it was a little strange, as you can imagine, the tension. But anyway, we get it on a 18-wheeler and 400 pieces, I might add, and we ship it down to Texas. We thought it was going to be in Stubbs, but that didn't work out for various reasons. And we had it in a climate-controlled storage for 10 years before we found the place on Lamar where we have it now. And so, it was a very special project. We didn't even know what the name was going to be at the time. We just knew we had this beautiful, special bar. And so that was kind of the beginning of the whole Eberly concept. And so, like any great story, it kind of unfolded. And I won't go into the whole story about Eberly, but Austin is here today as a capital because of Angelina Eberly. And y'all may know that story.
It's got the statue, the bronze statue on Congress, right?
That's right.
The cannon?
Yeah, that's her. Yeah, she was the one that saved Austin, shot a cannon into a Wagner brigade that was going to take the archives from Austin and take it to Houston. They wanted Houston to be the capital of
Sam
Texas.
Houston, right? Yeah, Sam Houston wanted his own namesake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a cool story. So we thought, well, we'll pay homage to Angelina Eberly because she overheard that conversation of the archives trying to transport down to Houston. And she said, Austin is the capital. It should remain the capital. And so, we pay tribute to her because Austin wouldn't be here without her heroic efforts of the cannon. So that's why we call it Eberly. And, we've had a great run. We're almost on our 9th year now.
Okay.
We've had our challenges, but it's an amazing, again, experience. And I think that's really great food, great environment, great culture, beautiful place. And it's been a lot of fun to be a part of that.
You've got an open kitchen. You've got decor that's amazing. You got a solarium. You have a two-way mirror.
Yeah, there's a private room and all that.
Giant buffalo head. You have gender-neutral bathrooms, I think, done in a way that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, well, that was a requirement by the city. That was their code. That's what they wanted, the city of Austin. And it was like, okay, well, this the way we, the plan had said that we have to adhere to a different type of format of bathroom, right? and it's really become a big focal part of our restaurant. In fact, I think we won an award, a national award for what the most interesting and beautiful bathroom. So we got that right.
I mean, every detail really is it feels like it was well planned and designed. Now, I've heard a story. So there was years ago, I think I was on a Southwest flight and they had the movies you could watch, and there's some documentary about Bill Murray, and it's all just crazy, unbelievable stories that you'd never ever believe about Bill Murray. And I've heard rumors of this, but I'd love to hear it from you. Bill Murray has visited Eberly's bar, recognized it from New York City, and was over the moon about it. Like, how did that all happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably every week we have celebrities and people that walk in. And I got a text last night from Tommy, my brother's best friend, who's still part of the Eberly team. There was a gentleman, I don't know his name, but he would go to the bar in 1970s, and he was an NYU student, and he lives in Boston, and he heard about the bar that they had. We put it back together and Humpty Dumpty and put it all back together. And he flew down this week and was there last night because he wanted to have a beer at the bar.
I love that.
And so that stuff happens, those stories happen very frequently. And yes, Bill Murray was there. By the way, Bill Murray was a bartender behind Stubbs on one of the shows. I can't remember what show he attended, but he's a fun guy, and I'm a big fan of his, obviously. But I think some crew members, Saturday Night Live kind of goes way back then. They used to go there a lot. So, yeah, I mean, Jimi Hendrix would be there. Let's see, Andy Warhol used to hang out there.
Dang.
So another kind of one of those, the pedigree is just amazing of the people that would go to the Cedar Tavern bar. And, I will add that, and this is my opinion, that I think it looks better today than it ever has, right?
Sure.
Because it's not in a small little railroad spot in, New York City. It's in our facility is 14,000 square feet, and that's really the focal point of the room. So it's really celebrated in a big way. So, and to your point, it's people come there. They have weddings and business meetings, and everyone is enjoying their life, and we get to celebrate that at Eberly. So it's a very special place.
Yeah, somewhere along the way, it feels like this love for food and entrepreneurship has crossed into this love for like giving people great experiences.
Sure.
Because what you get at Stubbs, what you get at Eberly, and I think what you're trying to do, which you haven't got to yet, Austin's Pizza, is an experience. That's a community experience. So I do want to talk a little bit about Austin's Pizza. You bought that franchise here a few years ago. Is that right? Or the whole company? I shouldn't say franchise.
Yeah. So that was an interesting story too. So when Stubbs ended and we started Eberly, I had to kind of reinvent myself. Like, what is the next step? And I, obviously with CPG, consumer packaging goods, is part of my background, and the restaurant play there. So I went to a friend of mine at the time who had Austin's Pizza, and I said, hey, would you be interested? And this was after I had non-competes with McCormick, so I couldn't sell barbecue sauce, but I could still be in the grocery industry.
All right,
so
I like that.
So that worked out well. And I said, and it was something that I had enjoyed, and I went to JD and I said, hey, would you be interested in selling Austin's Pizza in HEB? And he goes, no, man, you don't get it. We're a delivery. And I said, no, well, would you consider it a frozen? Keep the delivery. I think they're complementary businesses. And so we said, yeah, we'd pay you a license or a royalty to use that. And so we did that. We went to HEB, my contacts there. We had our pizzas. What's really neat about that frozen pizza, because there's a lot of, as you can imagine, like barbecue sauces, there's a lot of choices.
Oh yeah.
And but ours is a whole milk mozzarella, right? And I say that because most frozen pizzas have a skim mozzarella, and the pepperoni is not even. It's not even a real pepperoni. But we have an authentic, a really good product, and we've sold that in HEB for 10 years, and it's done really well. And so when COVID hit and it shut down Stubbs, shut down Austin's Pizza, shut down Eberly, I mean, it hit everybody. It hit everybody hard, right? So when that happened, some people got back in business. Stubbs thankfully did. Eberly got back in business, thankfully. And at the time, Austin's Pizza, I had an opportunity to go in and acquire the restaurants. There was 12 and now there's 5. So it's kind of changed, that's part of the COVID effect. But I took that over knowing that the CPG is important. And now we have 5 restaurants that we're operating with Austin's Pizza, and we're trying to build some of that foundation of experience, like the Westlake. We just redid Westlake.
It's beautiful.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's a great little park atmosphere, families can come there. You can bring your kids. You can feel safe. They get to play on the pirate ship and play on the grass and watch a movie, a free movie or a sporting event. Because I wanted to provide values, because Austin's so expensive. It really is. And I was looking to try to go to a UT football game, and I love the games, but a family of 4, parking, food, tickets, you're $500.
Easy.
Right. So, to be able to go to Austin's Pizza, get a pizza for $20, watch the game on TV, and do that in a fun atmosphere. I thought that was something that, in Westlake, right in the middle of Austin, could be something that might be of interest to families. So we're having a lot of fun with that too. And I would add too that the part of Austin's Pizza that is expanding is, we have HEB, and we have for 10 years. It's been a great business and great partnership. We're launching 4 of our pizzas, Austin's Pizza, into Walmart this summer.
It's a huge deal.
So it's working, and I will tell you, the restaurant space, for all those listening and think about restaurants, give it some real thought, because it's a tough gig for sure.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And especially with COVID, I mean, you had 3 things impact at the same time. That had to have been incredibly difficult. Hung around, made it work, and today you're stronger.
Yeah, it was. And, I always tell people that, you in journey of business, you don't learn from success, you learn from failures. You learn from the tough times. And we had some tough times for sure. When the restaurants were closed, guess what? The restaurant business, the CPG, the frozen pizza business was up. So it's kind of a nice hedge, if you will, but it doesn't replace being closed. I mean, that was definitely a challenge for all of us.
So with everything you've achieved, you said you still don't sit still very often, which adds up for me. I know that.
Yeah.
How do you define success now? What does the next chapter of success look like for you?
It's a great question. For me, I'm at a part of my life now where, you prioritize, you try to, hopefully you know what you're good at, you know what you're bad at, but you always want to be curious. You want to continue to learn. You want to, which I think fascinated by that, that aspect. And I still feel like you want to have fun. You want to have fun and enjoy what you're doing. You hear that all your life. If you're having fun doing something, you're never going to work a day in your life. We all have heard that.
Yeah.
And I'm a living example of that. I've never had to work. I don't look at it as work. I really enjoy, figuring out challenges, working with great people. And so the next steps for me are, I want to continue to pursue the CPG part of the Austin's Pizza and see what, what does that bandwidth look like, because I will share with you that when you look at the category, the size of the prize, and you look at how much is a barbecue sauce category, right? Well, it's at the time when we sold, it was about $700 million category. All barbecue sauces sold.
All combined. Okay.
Correct. Any idea what frozen pizza as a category would be?
It's got to be 7-10 times that size. It's
$6 billion. $6 billion.
Okay. All right.
So it's a bigger category, but it's also a harder category because it's frozen. And I say that with you because that to me is something that still interests me. And I want to continue to work. I'm bad at golf, and I don't have too many hobbies. So, but I will say that I want to continue to work hard and continue to look for opportunities. But I'm at a point now where I'm enjoying my family, I enjoy my kids, and that priority is something that I probably didn't have in my early days at Stubbs, because I was traveling a lot, and I didn't even have a pet. I didn't play on a softball team because I wasn't around. So being around, being present, is something that I it's really important to me at that stage of my life. But still building and still looking for opportunities and continuing to push myself and find challenges and be successful. Because success is, I will add that it's not, as I've always mentioned, it's not an event that happens. I mean, yes, it can be, but it's more the journey for me. It's like all the things that lead up to that. And you'll find that your successes in life, in my opinion, or at least for me, you'll only get a few of those, but you're going to get a lot of the work and the hard effort and the community that you're going to build, the friendships and the relationships and the partnerships, all that. That's really, I know it sounds corny, but that's really, there's so much value in that. And it's something that's not lost on me.
So Austin's been really the major element of your life since coming back from New York City. You've done so many things, built so many things here. I think we haven't gotten too deep. I know we talked a little bit about permitting in the past, about the city and some of the challenges that there are to be an entrepreneur and do things here. Yeah. But what's it going to take to keep you here the rest of your life? What is it about Austin that keeps you here? What is it about Austin that you think needs to change or really be thoughtful about?
Well, it's again, another great question. And, I think that there's, anytime you see this kind of attraction, I believe in laws of attraction, right? Mm-hmm. We're always going to do stuff individually that we want to do and pursue. Well, that doesn't change in the macro sense, I believe. Like, people want to be in Austin. And when you see that kind of influx of people and businesses, it's going to be a challenge. And so Austin, I think, just has had their challenges, and just from permitting, if you will, when you develop things. I mean, that I can bore you all day with all the challenges that we've had with Eberly, and I've recently experienced some with Austin's Pizza.
Yeah.
And so, I think there has to be a collaboration in terms of what's right for the city, what's right for the businesses, because you need each other, right? And you need to provide, like I was mentioning, providing experience for families, I think, is important, because they're looking for the opportunities for their families to be here, and I think that the economics are playing such a big part of that.
It is,
and so that's tough. That's a challenge. I mean, I could sit here all day and tell you all the things that are wrong, like our property taxes, and kids can't even get into UT that live in this city, stuff like that, right? But the reality is, you have to create an environment that's kind of that recognizes why people want to be here, and you create an environment that is that works for everyone, and that's hard to do. I know I'm painting a big stroke here, but it's really, I think we need the right leadership, right, to be able to provide some direction on that, and sometimes that is a challenge. I personally would never want to be a politician, especially in this town.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
It's funny because Austin, as you know, is a very democratic or very liberal city. That's fine, mm-hmm. and everything around Austin is very conservative and more Republican. I mean, I guess being the capital, obviously those are the reasons why. But I think we all have to work together. And I tell you, as a business guy, what's frustrating, and I will give you anecdotally one thing. What's frustrating is when, as a business person, if the direction a city wants to give you, right, and there's permitting reasons, right, that there's certain steps you have to take to get certain things done. Mm-hmm. And I can give you examples, but what's frustrating is when those things are done and you do what is required, and then that request changes.
Yeah, it's a bait and switch, essentially.
100%. And that is really frustrating for anybody in business. And we have a lot of that, unfortunately. And I know that's bureaucracy and at its finest. Mm-hmm. But I have a project that I've just got completed that took me almost 2 years to get through a bunch of that stuff, And I don't think Austin's the only city that has that. But maybe AI, right, can help that flow of understanding what's kind of a fair way to business and do things in a healthy environment.
That's great. I agree with you 100%. So I think the city definitely has some things to reflect upon, but I think the law of attraction of where people are coming, Austin's still it. And
100%, yeah.
It's just the affordability that's the struggle in some ways.
Right.
So I want to go to the last segment we have, which is called the Good Hang segment. So this is meant to kind of replicate what it's like to go to lunch, dinner, what it's like to meet you up for happy hour. What's your opinions on the city? So I want to, especially with someone with the experience that you've had and the different, I'm sure, amazing life experience you've had. First question. If you could meet any Austinite, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Wow. Ann Richards kind of pops up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason, I never met her, but my grandfather had kind of like a Home Depot back in the day.
Okay.
And it was called Richards Equipment Company, because she's from Waco and her family had a business there. And so my grandfather with the business, and Then my dad even moved Ann Richards into her dorm at Baylor. So, but I never met her. But I was really, when I look back into stories about her, I mean, she was a pioneer, and I never got to meet her, but, she kept the automobile industry in Texas single-handedly.
That's amazing.
So anyway, she would be a fun person to meet. Just kind of popped in my mind. But there's obviously so many folks you could add to that list.
That's a great one. No, that's a great choice. So this is a real tough question, I'm sure. But what's the most unforgettable live music experience you've ever had in Austin?
Unforgettable?
Unforgettable.
Well, there's a part A and a part B to this.
Okay.
So part A was Snoop Dogg.
Okay. All right.
So you can imagine Snoop Dogg we got Snoop Dogg to come to Stubbs. Everyone was excited, right? So he comes, puts his bus outside, and we're all, the place is packed. 3,000 people are down there waiting for him to come on. But it was during the NBA Finals. The Lakers were playing. He's a big Laker fan. And, the tip-off was like 8 o'clock on the West Coast. So,
oh, no.
So he wants to watch the whole game. And the people in the audience are like, what's going on? It's like they're just getting a little restless and angry, and boos and all that were coming. But he watched the whole game. Anyway, he came out and he played for like 15 minutes.
Oh no!
And because we have a sound ordinance, we had to stop.
Yeah.
So he played 15 minutes, and you can imagine how upset everybody was. So part A was like, that was, people wanted their money back. It was not a good experience, right? And going back to experience, so it was not a good one. So he leaves, and that everyone was like, man, we took it on the chin on that one, right? A few years later, Snoop Dogg was. We got him back. And we're like, oh man, here we go again. It's going to be another, disappointment. But he came back. He wore the Ricky Williams jersey, the throwback jersey. He came out there, and I think he played 2.5 hours. He redeemed himself, and it turned out to be one of the best shows. So it was a lot of fun. So anyway, part A and part B.
Snoop Dogg, both. I like it. Is there an album or artist or something about the music scene in Austin or your personal experience that you really reflect well upon today?
So, yeah, I look back and some of the albums, and not anything in particular, but a big fan of Willie Nelson,
Yeah.
I remember as a young man and, listening to his music, and I thought, man, that's, I just kind of related to that. Went out and bought my first cowboy hat, after some of his listening to his music. And it's still there today, right? And the rite of passage, I'll never forget when we tried so hard to get Willie to play at Stubbs. And we talked to his management, and there was a lot of reasons why he couldn't play or didn't play, but he played. I remember he was about to play at Stubbs, and his manager came down because he wanted to see what Stubbs was like, and looked around, and he said, how many people can this place hold? And we didn't know, because it's a different kind of. We didn't have chairs, we didn't have like a head count at the time. And I remember Willie manager Larry Trader was his name. Manager, he said, you know what? After Willie plays here, I can tell you exactly how many people this place will hold. And he's right.
Confidence.
He's right. And so when he played, I'll never forget, that was just an amazing rite of passage. And, so it gets me every time, man. I'm a big Willie fan. And, to see Trigger and him come up there and do their thing is special.
That's amazing. So let's see. I'll throw a couple other things at you. What do you said you don't have a lot of hobbies. What do you like to do when you're not running your businesses?
Yeah, so I do have, I guess, one hobby that kind of is my happy place is surfing. I like doing the wake surfing on the lake. I have the thing I do called, and you're welcome to come anytime. It's a Friday morning surf camp, and we go out there because the lakes get busy now, right? Because it's so crowded. But if you go out there about 7 in the morning, water is beautiful. It's kind of good therapy for me, and so I really enjoy that. So getting on the water and surfing is fun thing to do. I'm not great at it, but hey, I can let go of the rope a little bit, and it's a lot of fun.
Texas surfing, I like it. You don't need an ocean for that.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you said you have celebrities come through practically every week at Eberly. What's a favorite memory you have of a celebrity passing through Eberly, and what happened?
Yeah, well, just recently, I think we had, and maybe this is for the women in the audience. Matthew McConaughey came by the other day, and he's great. He is Austin, right? And so when you have the ambassador come by and the Minister of Culture come by, and he was, I think, promoting a film, but he came into Eberly, and we, as you know, in Eberly we have that glass atrium. So he was with a group inside the atrium, and everyone said, "Hey, leave him alone. Give him his space, right?" and the whole perimeter was just lined by women, just, our fans, right? But he's a great guy, so that was fun. And but yeah, no, we get athletes, and Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, was there I guess about a year ago. And,
okay.
So it's fun, and I think that we have that experience that we can deliver on a high level that that I think the patrons want. But it's really, and it's less about celebrity. It's just about we treat everyone, and I really mean that. We treat everyone that comes to Eberly like a celebrity. I mean, when you have a birthday party, happy birthday, Adam, is on your menu, and you feel very connected there. And I think that's part of there's so many choices for people to go eat and celebrate their life events. We want to make that a special moment for you. Well,
I encourage our listeners to check out Eberly. Go visit Austin's Pizza at one of their 5 locations. Thanks again to Eddy Patterson for joining us on the Austin Eras podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it with the fellow Austinite. I'm sure this has got to be a favorite of a lot of listeners. You can learn more about Eddy's work at Austin's Pizza, Eberly, and the legacy of Stubbs BBQ. For more stories about the people shaping our city, head to austineras.com and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again, Eddy.
Adam, thank you, buddy. Great seeing you. Thank you. All right.
Austin Eras, featuring Adam Flagg, is brought to you by Collective Advisors. Collective Advisors offers investment advisory services through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Guests on Austin Eras are not affiliates of CWM LLC, and opinions expressed by guests may not reflect those of CWM LLC. This show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes and is not intended to provide specific legal, tax, or other professional advice. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a qualified professional.